Silence doesn't happen by accident. It's engineered. In this family, silence wasn't a pause, it was a system. A pressure strategy that rewarded compliance and punished resistance without ever raising a voice. On the surface, viewers saw distance. Missed calls. Awkward confessionals. A father saying he was hurt. But underneath that visible tension was something far more calculated. Authority preserved through absence. Control maintained by disengagement. And emotional cost quietly transferred to the people with the least leverage, the children. This wasn't chaos. It was pattern. As marriages collapsed, one thing stayed intact: power. Land ownership. Decision control. Narrative dominance. And while the public debated polygamy, something else was being rewritten. Legacy, inheritance, and who would be remembered as loyal, or expendable. The terrifying implication isn't divorce. It's what happens when silence becomes policy. And repair is delayed long enough to become impossible. Tonight, we're not recapping drama. We're tracing the system behind it, with receipts, timelines, and connections the show never aligned for you. Silence is rarely accidental. In families, silence is often the loudest form of communication. Not a pause between words, but the absence of words where something should have been said. For years, viewers watched a family insist that plural marriage was functional, intentional, and rooted in faith. They saw smiles at kitchen tables. They heard reassurances during confessionals. They were told, again and again, that this family was different. But long before any official separation, long before headlines and legal filings, something else had already begun. A quiet withdrawal, a pattern of emotional distance, and a series of choices that, according to insiders, changed everything. This is not the story of one explosive moment. It is the story of what happens after the cameras stop recording. When public narratives collide with private realities. And when silence becomes impossible to ignore. A family built on visibility. When Sister Wives premiered in 2010, it introduced audiences to a modern polygamist family navigating love, faith, and public scrutiny. At the center stood Kody Brown, a self-described patriarch attempting to balance 4 marriages under one spiritual framework. Alongside him were his wives: Meri Brown, Janelle Brown, Christine Brown, Robyn Brown. The premise was radical transparency. The promise was honesty. From the very beginning, the show positioned itself as a corrective, to challenge stereotypes, to humanize plural families, and to argue that love could be multiplied rather than divided. But visibility comes with a cost. And as seasons passed, cracks began to show. Here is the question few asked at the time. What happens when a family built for television begins living for the television? Behind the carefully edited episodes, off-camera dynamics were shifting. Relationships were changing faster than the show could document them. And according to people close to the family, the most damaging shifts were not romantic. They were parental. The move that changed everything. In 2018, the Browns made a decision that would redefine their future. They left Las Vegas. They relocated to Flagstaff, Arizona. And they purchased a large parcel of land known as Coyote Pass. On screen, the move was framed as strategic: safer schools, fresh air, and a return to shared living. But multiple adult children later described the move as destabilizing. For some, it marked the beginning of emotional distance from their father. Public records confirm that the Coyote Pass property was purchased in multiple parcels, with ownership structures that were, at best, complex. Legal analysts have since noted that the lack of uniform ownership created long-term power imbalances. This land was supposed to unify the family. Instead, it became symbolic of division. Land never lies. Land does not respond to intention. It responds to deeds, to names on paper, to who controls access, and who does not. And according to insiders, resentment grew quietly as expectations and legal realities diverged. A stress test. The COVID-19 pandemic exposed fault lines that had already formed. Kody Brown implemented strict protocols, rules that varied in enforcement across households. While some family members complied fully, others felt excluded, marginalized, or punished. Several adult children later stated publicly that communication during this period broke down entirely. In one televised confessional, Kody admitted he had limited contact with certain children for extended periods. This moment marked a shift in public perception. Viewers began asking a difficult question. Was leadership becoming control? When authority is challenged. In families, authority is sustained by trust. When trust erodes, authority does not disappear quietly. It fractures. The children speak indirectly. While many adult children avoided direct media interviews, their perspectives surfaced elsewhere. Reddit threads, Instagram posts, subtle comments during live streams. Fans documented patterns, missed milestones, unequal presence, emotional withdrawal. On our Sister Wives, one highly upvoted post read, "It feels like he chose being right over being present." Another commenter wrote, "You can't discipline adults by disappearing." These were not accusations made in anger. They were observations made in grief. Silence is a strategy. Sometimes silence is not avoidance. It is a strategy, a way to maintain control without confrontation. Public statements versus private actions. In multiple interviews and confessionals, Kody Brown expressed pain over strained relationships with his children. He described himself as misunderstood, as wounded, as a father longing for reconciliation. But insiders say something critical was missing. Action. No documented family mediation. No consistent outreach. No neutral third-party intervention. From a legal and psychological standpoint, experts note that reconciliation requires behavioral repair, not narrative alignment. Words without follow-through deepen mistrust. WHO benefits from stalemate. When conflict remains unresolved, one side often benefits from delay. The other absorbs the cost. The exit of the wives. Christine Brown's departure in 2021 marked the first public collapse of the family structure. Janelle followed with a spiritual separation. Meri quietly disengaged long before formal confirmation. Each exit reduced Kody's relational leverage. And with fewer marriages to manage, scrutiny intensified around his role as a father. Fans noticed something else. As wives left, children did not return. Absence has a memory. Children remember patterns. They remember who showed up, and who stopped trying. The insider claim, according to individuals close to production and extended family circles, the so-called bombshell is not a single revelation. It is a confirmation that Kody Brown's estrangement from several adult children was not accidental, not temporary, and not prioritized for repair. The claim is not that he did not feel pain. It is that pain was not translated into accountability. Intent does not equal impact. Intent explains motivation. Impact defines legacy. Community response. On Facebook, longtime viewers expressed disappointment rather than shock. On YouTube, reaction videos focused less on drama and more on loss. One comment with thousands of likes read, "This isn't about polygamy. It's about emotional availability." Another said, "You can't be the hero of a story. You refuse to finish." These responses suggest a shift in audience alignment, from curiosity to accountability. Stories evolve. When the audience grows, the story must mature. From a sociological perspective, Sister Wives has become a case study. Not in plural marriage, but in power, visibility, and relational maintenance under surveillance. The show may continue, but the original thesis, that love multiplied as love expanded, has been fundamentally challenged. The Brown family's legacy is no longer about structure. It is about repair, or the absence of it. This story does not end with a lawsuit, or a headline, or even a final episode. It continues in private conversations that may never happen. In phone calls not returned. In birthdays marked without acknowledgement. In the space where reconciliation could have lived. Silence is not neutral. It shapes outcomes. If we go back to the earliest seasons, the warning signs were not dramatic. They were procedural. In the first few years, the family emphasized equality through structure. Rotating schedules, evenly divided holidays, carefully managed appearances of balance. But as early as season 5, subtle language shifts appeared. Leadership began to replace partnership. By season 8, Kody often spoke about obedience as respect. A reframing that would later define conflict with his adult children. During the Las Vegas years, stability masked strain. The houses were close enough to simulate unity, but far enough to allow emotional withdrawal without immediate consequence. When the Flagstaff move occurred, those buffers disappeared. Distance became permanent, and unresolved tension finally had space to grow. In retrospect, the family did not fracture suddenly. It slowly lost its connective tissue, episode by episode. And when the structure changed, the relationships were forced to stand on their own. Family psychology experts often note that authority-based parenting works only while dependence exists. Once children become adults, authority must evolve into reciprocity. In this case, the transition appears to have stalled. Kody Brown frequently framed conflict as disrespect, rather than difference. According to clinical family studies, this pattern can trigger emotional withdrawal. Not as punishment, but as identity preservation. When a parent's self-concept is challenged, reconciliation feels like surrender. The result is silence. Not because communication is impossible, but because engagement feels unsafe. This does not require malicious intent. It only requires rigidity. And rigidity, once normalized, becomes indistinguishable from absence. Coyote Pass was never just land. It was leverage. Public property records show a fragmented ownership structure, with unequal name placement across parcels. In family law, this creates a silent hierarchy, one that persists regardless of emotional reconciliation. Several insiders have stated that discussions about building stalled, not because of money, but because agreement required shared authority. And shared authority had already eroded. Unlike relationships, land does not respond to apology. Once control is codified, emotional repair cannot override legal reality. In that sense, Coyote Pass locked the family into a future where reunification was structurally discouraged. The land didn't break the family, but it made walking back impossible. Early audience reactions framed the situation as complicated. But over time, tone shifted. On Reddit, long-form posts began analyzing patterns rather than moments. On YouTube, reaction creators stopped asking what happened and started asking why nothing changed. One widely shared comment summarized the shift. This stopped being about plural marriage and became about emotional availability. The audience did not demand perfection. They demanded effort. And in their view, effort never arrived. When viewers stop debating motives, the verdict has already formed. To be fair, no family survives public exposure without damage. Kody Brown has repeatedly expressed pain, confusion, and loss. Plural parenting adds logistical strain few can comprehend. And the pressure of perpetual documentation distorts behavior. But complexity does not erase responsibility. Understanding context explains behavior. It does not absolve impact. And for many watching, the question is no longer why it was difficult, but why repair was never prioritized. And that question still hangs unanswered. If you're ready to step inside the investigation, engage now. Like this video to signal support, comment with what you've noticed but never heard explained, subscribe for ongoing breakdowns, and continue through the linked playlist where the evidence deepens. This isn't speculation. It's a pattern, and it's already documented.